Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. Jared and Nate with eCarrierCheck. I appreciate you guys being on. So today we're going to talk about a little bit more past the sales point of, we hit on cold calls all the time. We talk about getting past gatekeepers. Now I really want to just hit on, you get a shipping manager on the phone, a logistics manager on the phone. What are some good questions, right? And I think this is really important because if you look at some of the people that have been in logistics sales for maybe 1 year versus the guy that's in 10 years, the guy at 10 years, honestly, let's be honest, this guy is asking better questions.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we dive into this, I definitely want to hey, what's up? Brian over at Tire Killer. Hey, it's good to see you. If you guys have questions, pop them in. We'd love to talk to you guys and see what you're going on with the sales aspect. But definitely, Nate, give us a rundown. Obviously, we talk a lot about sales. We talk a lot about eCarrierCheck and how we can help people grow. Talk to us about more so in the sales environment. How do you find shippers on eCarrierCheck, and what do we do?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's very unique the way we can do that. It almost seems insane. We can help you find shippers by the type of equipment you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for some flatbed shippers out of Houston. Well, get on eCarrierCheck and let us show you what shippers are utilizing carriers with the flatbed. And, we can do that by location. So it's pretty cool. We can do by commodity. If you have a specific niche, we've helped a lot of people with niches in our industry, and we're able to find shippers that way. So it's really cool how we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, talk to me about your week. You got a lot of questions this week. Talk to me about your week. I just want to hear about it.
Honestly, we're sticking with sales today. So we get a lot of sales questions. Like, first off, getting past the gatekeeper. That's like one of the biggest things I've heard this week. How do I get past that gatekeeper? What's my next step after finding a shipper? What do I say? How do I get that shipper want to work with me? Or, really what's that next step? And I think that is the toughest part. And, like Jared mentioned was, if you're just starting off for your first time, or if you've been in the industry for a year, these are just scars you're going to have to learn through and go through. Just pick up that phone and make those scars and start building yourself.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think call anxiety or people that are not, picking up the phone, the guys that are not picking up the phone is more so just they may not be prepared.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think, to just pick up the phone and call a business, that's a tough gig, right? But if you take the time and look up who the guy is or gal, that's, the shipping manager, you look up what the company does, for crying out loud, at least know who their clients are. Get on their website and ask yourself the question, who are their clients, right?
I think that's very important because you want to know what you're getting into before you make that phone call, because otherwise you're going to sound like you're not really sure what you're doing. Hey, so if you want to check us out, get our email, go to eCarrierCheck.com. You'll see our support email there, and there's our number. So definitely reach out to us.
I love that. Somebody says, is there a place we can buy some ECC merch?
Ooh.
We do have some hot merch, but we haven't actually started to sell it yet. Maybe we need to. That's an interesting question. We'll work on that. That's a really interesting question. But back to sales today. Today, I really want to talk about, we got past the gatekeeper. We started to talk to the shipping manager. We set up a time. And so now what I think is important is, what questions are you asking? You know what I mean? You get the cold call and he says, hey, I'd like to schedule 15 minutes of your time. And this is that next meeting. This is the 15 minutes of their time. And what do you say? Right? So that's the ultimate goal. We're going to talk about those questions. And I really want to start to just explain more of the strategy first, and then we'll talk about the questions. I can send you these questions if you want it, just so you guys know. So feel free to, hit us up and we'll send you those questions. But I think you really need to understand, the who, what, whens, and wheres and whys, right? How many of you have asked your kids, if you have kids, if you don't have kids, how many of you asked somebody how their day was and they just say good, right? Or you say, hey, how was school today? It was fine. Yeah. And I get a one-word answer. I cannot stand that.
Yeah.
So, you got to make sure that you're asking open-ended questions, first and foremost, okay? And I think it's important that you write them down even. Take the time to write them down. and really be prepared to talk about their business. You get a 15 minutes, you need to go on their website, you need to research them, right? They've already agreed and are somewhat interested in what it is that you're doing. So, let's kick off a freight meeting, a sales meeting, and talk about some of these questions. So, you know, a couple things you might ask, especially depending on what you do. If you're a freight broker and you're not necessarily managing networks, like a global trans or somebody that goes all in and says we need to manage your entire network, right? You're asking different questions at the different levels of service that you're providing. Some 3PLs, right, offer full solutions, right? Some freight brokers, especially if you're just getting started, are just trying to move some freight, right? So let's talk about that. So, let's talk about, can you describe to me your quoting process, right? Instead of saying, how do you get quotes? Describe to me your quoting process. I think this way it starts to open up, how are they getting quotes? Are they on contract, or are they dealing the spot market? Do they have consistent lanes, right? Somebody says, would you recommend Facebook stalking? You might post it up. He's cold calling people and trying to relate to them more on the first call, and should you focus more on their business? Yeah, I really don't think, a couple things I just mentioned was, that call reluctance comes from not being prepared. And when you're not prepared, you talk about yourself because you just stumble. But when you're sitting there going, okay, I know about this guy. Here's a weird LinkedIn secret right here for you guys. If you get on and they have a LinkedIn profile, don't just look up, oh, they've been working here for 3 years or 4 years. Scroll down to the bottom and look at their recommendations. And the reason why I say that is one of my best clients that I ever got, on his LinkedIn profile, he called himself Matthew. But when you scroll down to his recommendations, his friends called him Matt. So I knew when I called him, and I cold called him for the first time, which he was still a client when I left the brokerage. But when I first called him, I said, hey, Matt, no, this is Jared over at NTC. I was at NTC at the time, right? And so I wasn't calling him Matthew. I didn't sound, like I was cold calling him. But I do think that you have to Facebook stalk, you have to LinkedIn stalk, because you got to be able to relate to these people. And then you really hope that you can get them to say yes several times. If we talk about psychology of dealing with people, now what you're going to say is, hey, I see you're the VP of supply chain at XYZ Manufacturing. Are you still the VP there? Yes, right? There's your first yes. You're always wanting to get them to that yes. Now, that's more in the cold call process, not so as much in this process that we're talking about. This is really more, hey, we're in the, now what we've done is we're in the, you've meeting them, you're trying to find out if you can get together with them. So, asking them to describe your quoting process. Now you're going to understand, are they sending out emails to 40 brokers or 40 carriers, or are they using some kind of technology? Are they getting, are they using an email system, and it just says, hey, here's, this load, and send me your best quote back in the next hour, right? You may be able to tell where people are at with, are you going to be freight chasing this whole time with this client? Or are you going to be able to come and say, yeah, I would love to quote you some lanes. How consistent are these lanes, right? Because I think that's really important. Something that's really simple, especially as you guys are starting to get going, are you utilizing freight brokers and carriers? Is there a mix that you guys are using, right? And once you start having that aspect, you'll understand more and more. Are they open to utilizing, a carrier, or do they not like carriers? They only work with brokers. Do they not like brokers? They only work with carriers. You can at least take the time to understand and be prepared in that particular conversation. They may have objections with one or the other, right? If they don't like brokers, then let's acknowledge that and ask another question around it. Okay. For example, hey, we don't use brokers. Okay. I completely understand that. I understand why you're doing that, mainly because you want to make sure you're controlling the environment. This is why we're using carriers. Is there a moment where your carriers don't have capacity that maybe you could utilize a good freight broker to help you with those loads that your carriers don't want to take, right? Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's important. The next one I really think is kind of hit on is asking them what technology are they using. If they're talking about, just sending out emails, this is probably a smaller shipper. If they've got a big system, a TMS, a transportation management system, those ones, you're definitely going to want to understand what technology are they using and what technology are you requiring of me as a freight broker or as a carrier, right? What's our tracking? How often do we hear? How much tracking do we have or visibility? We hear this a lot.
Yeah, we hear it a lot, definitely. And I think that's important too. That's what we talk about, doing that research. And, maybe you forget a question. Maybe you should have asked,
Yeah.
And that's okay. No one wakes up one day and they're an expert in sales
Right.
calling. So
Exactly.
learn that.
Exactly. So the next thing, after you get on their website and you ask yourself, who are their customers? You know what you're actually really trying to figure out? Yes, you care about who their customers are. We want all our clients to be successful, right? But if you ask who their customers are, you're going to figure out, are they home deliveries or commercial deliveries? It's really that simple, right? Do I need to send my box truck or my 53-foot dry van, down a driveway here comparative to bumping a dock, right? So this is also going to reflect in the quotes that you're going to be giving. If you're going to home, it's different than commercial, right? So I really like this, and this is something that you've got to be prepared for, is, tell me more about your shipping department and what requirements you have, right? And what I'm looking at getting there are, such as hours of service, when are you open? Do you have a PO process? Is there a guard that I have to check in with? Do you have a pickup number? Is there an emergency weekend number? I don't know of any issue that came up that didn't happen at the right time.
Stuff happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even honestly, eCarrierCheck. Now, we don't necessarily answer the phones on weekends, but how many people do we have, that call us on the weekends? And we probably should have a little weekend host or someone that can answer the calls, right?
Yep.
So, finding out weekend numbers, pickup numbers, hours of loading, hours of service, I think that's really important to be able to go out and say, hey, yes, here's what we're looking at doing. Once you get into and you're set up with these people, really what I think is also important is asking, what documents are required to get paid. Having some of those questions I think is really important, right? So getting somebody to come on there and say, hey, I need you to send a proof of delivery. I need you to send a bill of lading. I need you to send an invoice and a bill of lading. And then clarifying, ask the question. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to figure out how to get paid. It's a part of business. Don't forget to ask those questions. You know what I mean? I think we just had somebody ask, what's your biggest scar you have from sales and how did it make you the salesman you are today?
Good question.
That's a really good question there, Justin Schwarzkopf. I appreciate you asking that question. I learned at the very beginning of trucking to sort of fake it till you make it. And, all we have is, our values, our integrity. And I got caught up, not so much in a lie, but I over sort of committed to a situation that I didn't realize everything that was going to need to be happening. And to be honest with you, I look back at that situation and that was literally like a month and a half into my sales role, 10, 12, 15 years ago, right? And I kind of look back at it and so I should have taken the time to say, you know what, this is a wonderful question. I really need to get an ops guy involved. And I also think, this is kind of an interesting question because I think you can get to a point where if you don't know something, don't be afraid to ask somebody for help. Get a mentor. If you're at your house by yourself, find a mentor, right? Send us questions, emails. We're always here to help.
Yeah, definitely. We're just really quick. I just want to give a shout out.
Please.
We got a couple of teachers that we link up with, like Shaggy at Shaggy's Consulting, Charles Mundy. So, ask those questions. People are going through those same situations. So I just want to throw that out
Yeah,
there.
no, I think that's really good. I just think I don't want people to feel like they're alone in situations and they don't know a certain terminology. If you don't know it, in my opinion, as a salesman, that's okay. Just say, you know what, I don't know if I know the answer to that question. Let me consult somebody and I will get back to you.
That'll build trust too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I shouldn't have taken that, fake it till you make it situation. I really should have taken the time to get somebody else involved, especially because I work for a huge company. It was silly to do that. Another question that you really need to ask when you start moving your product and you start moving things, ask how much cargo insurance they require. Ask what the freight is worth. You load a load. How much is a load of raspberries comparative to how much is a load of frozen fish? Or maybe somebody just built, 3 plastic molding injection machines, and they sold for $250,000 each, right? So I think it's important that you understand, how much do things cost, right? So take the time, look up how much they cost, look up, make sure that you meet the requirements that they need for as far as insurance and things like that. And really start to understand the client. Try to be more consultative, try to be more of a value add. And here's a really deep question, but what metrics are in place to ensure that you're seeing improvements in either cost or service, right? So believe me, these shipping managers, logistics managers, they look at a report daily. How often do I come in and look at reports?
Oh, daily.
Every single day. Every single day, I want to know, what's going on with business. I'm trying to hit ground level and really hit an understanding of, are people getting what they want out of this? And so those freight managers, logistics managers, they're doing the exact same thing, right? They're trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to make this decision. Did it work or not? I hired this LTL carrier. Did I get what I was hoping out of it? Am I seeing, on-time percentages with LTL carriers going up or down? Am I seeing the claims ratios with carriers going up and down? Am I seeing, that if I pay more, I'll get a higher quality carrier, or am I paying more and really not getting the service levels I was hoping for? We hear nightmare stories pretty consistently. Every week we hear something where it's just kind of nuts and you're like, wow, what's going on here? And, you really end up sacrificing. If you take the lowest carrier, you sort of end up sacrificing potentially either service or quality, right? So I've always heard that, you can pick 3, service, quality, or price, right? Or you can pick 2 and you can't have the other, right? So I definitely think that you've got to make sure that you're taking the time to, just understand what their matrix are, what their KPIs are, key performance indicators, right? So if you can understand what reports they pull up, what their expectations of carriers and brokers are, how do they measure you? Believe me, because you're getting compared to your competitors daily. Oh yeah, this broker killed it, or this guy communicated to more than anyone, or this guy's visibility platform is insane, or this guy's invoices are always on time, clean, clear cut, and I'm able to get them done, right? So you might even ask them too, what is the relationship between you and accounting, and what do they need to see on the documents that are sending in? How do they, this is more into that 3PL sale, but how do they make sure that what you quoted them is the same that we're invoicing, right? There's these huge companies out there that do a lot of billing, right? And there's a lot of inaccuracies. In fact, when I worked, at that LTL company, we always saw that there was all these inaccuracies with billing process. And it seemed like, it was, I don't know what the statistics were, but it was like 5 to 10% of the bills were off. How many, we were working in that brokerage last week. How many of the guys were talking about, I got this bill and it was wrong?
Yeah. Shoot. Yeah. I heard that a lot, honestly. And it almost seems stressful for them.
Yeah,
in a way.
Absolutely. Trying to take the stresses out of a shipping manager's life and being a part of their department essentially is the ultimate goal. So, hit on the quoting process. How are they doing it? the answers to those, definitely will explain, are you going to be freight chasing, or is there a potential chance to get contract work? Are you utilizing freight brokers and carriers, and then playing it toward whatever you are, and acknowledging that if you're a freight broker, let's go down this road. If you're a carrier, try to go down that road. The technology play, boy, there's a lot of shippers out there still using emails, but I definitely think that it's important that you understand what technology they require of you. And there's tools such as EDI, electronic data interchange, right? Some shippers require EDI, so you're going to have to get technology to help you with that. Some shippers require visibility platforms like MacroPoint or Text Locate, or Project 44, right? There's a lot of different variations of visibility. Asking who their customers are, describing their shipping department. Just, you can't forget to have these questions in your back pocket. The other day, the lady called in and said, hey, I called the shipper and asked him this. And I said, well, did he get their shipping hours and their, and things like that. So those are all the good questions. I can definitely, a couple thoughts on this is, I think it's important to really take time to watch your process. Record yourself having these calls. And when you're in a call with somebody, don't slouch down, don't smile. Have a camera right there and record it. Make sure you're smiling. Make sure your posture's good. Make sure you're in a good mood. You've got coffee. You're feeling relaxed, right? If you start to feel anxiety come up when you have this call, that's okay. Just address the anxiety. Take a deep breath. Ask them how their day is going. Let them talk. Breathe in through your nose for just 3 or 4 seconds. And just get ready. Be in the mental readiness to have these conversations. So, Nate, I love when these questions come in. We really try to provide as much value as possible to people. Yeah. As we're really trying to help people grow their businesses. Mm-hmm. So, we got this question literally from somebody. They said, well, what questions should I ask when we were talking to shipping managers? So keep the questions coming. I hope that I gave you some good questions. I can send you over questions if you want to. Take me up on that and email us in. We'll get them over to you. Any other thoughts today, Nate?
There's one thing that you did mention, I believe it was last week, when you're doing your sales call, I think you should have a day, like you mentioned, have a day of doing your research, build your shippers list, write down your notes, and then maybe set a day aside, or definitely set a day aside for your sales call, your cold calls. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that your mindset's going to be a little bit different, and it's hard to switch from one mindset to another that. You've seen that in me. So it's like you have to really take your time, do your research. Maybe tomorrow do your cold calls, grow your network, post pictures of loads on your Facebook or whatever it may be. So anything to get yourself out there and build some value and trust. So yeah, there's my 2 cents.
I love it. Awesome. Well, I feel good about today. You guys enjoy your Friday. Thanks for being on. Thanks for watching. Keep the questions coming, though. Yeah. Honestly, we really drive a lot of Friday lives from questions, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, definitely. And check out a demo. Demos every Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern. So check out a demo with us. Go to eCarrierCheck.com. Sign up with us, and we'll show you how we can help you grow your business.
Yeah, and if you are a member of eCarrierCheck, join our Wednesday Q&A sessions. Man, they get deep. We were doing cold calls on them. They get really deep. Join one of our Q&As. We have special guests on. It's just really a lot of fun to be a part of those Q&As.
Great community.
Join those, enjoy those, and thank you guys. Have a great rest of your week.